Hey guys, welcome to a new solo leveling video. Today we are going to cover the entire Recruitment Arc, which is the 14th arc of solo leveling. Also, more solo leveling videos will be coming in the future, so make sure to subscribe. Now let's begin. Efforts to exterminate the ants continued relentlessly for 2 days in the southern regions of South Korea. The hunters from the top 5 major guilds worked tirelessly, determined to eradicate every last one of the deadly ants from Jeju Island. Meanwhile, the coast of China was not spared from the ant invasion. The relentless insects had already made their way into Chinese waters, causing widespread panic. The crew on board a Chinese ship could hardly believe the sight before them. The ants had flown all the way to China, and the crew had not been able to sleep for 2 days as they battled against the relentless swarm. As the second wave of ants approached, now within shooting range, the crew waited for the head captain's orders. But before they could act, an unknown hunter on board the ship stepped forward. His presence was drawing the attention of everyone around. The hunter looked up at the sky, watching as the horde of ants drew closer. Despite the overwhelming numbers, he remained unfazed. While releasing his aura, he unsheathed his swords and prepared for battle. The hunter swung his swords together, unleashing a powerful energy that sent shockwaves rippling through the sky. The sheer force of his attack was devastating, causing explosions that echoed through the air. The bodies of the ants, who were struck by the hunter's devastating attack, were split in half. Their remains dropped into the ocean below, showcasing the hunter's overwhelming power. With the threat neutralized, the hunter calmly sheathed his swords, wearing a disappointed expression. The battle had been too easy for someone of his caliber. As he surveyed the aftermath, the hunter couldn't help but think of the deadly ant Sung Jinwoo had battled against. The hunter remarked that if that ant were still alive, the battle might have been more challenging, perhaps even enjoyable for him. But now that all the ants were defeated, there was nothing more left to do. The hunter sighed, lamenting the lack of a worthy opponent, and watched as the waves of the ocean carried away the remnants of the deadly ants. In the Scavenger Guild of the United States, the atmosphere was tense as Laura, the secretary of the guild leader, contemplated the situation at hand. She was deep in thought about the connection between Hwang Dong-soo and Sung Jinwoo, two figures linked by a mysterious incident. Laura suspected that Sung Jinwoo might have been involved in the death of Hwang Dong-soo's older brother, which could explain why Hwang Dong-soo was now seeking revenge. As Laura considered the implications of this, she turned her thoughts to Thomas Andre, the guild master of the Scavenger Guild. Thomas Andre, a man known for his formidable power and influence, had been looking forward to meeting Sung Jinwoo in person. However, Thomas realized that given the current circumstances, this meeting might be more difficult to arrange. Laura mentioned that the potential for conflict between Hwang Dong-soo and Sung Jinwoo might complicate matters further, but Thomas Andre was not the one to take threats lightly, especially when it concerned his guild. To him, Hwang Dong-soo was not just a member of the Scavenger Guild, but rather the property of his guild, and he would not tolerate anyone, not even the government of the United States, interfering with what he considered his own property. On the third night of the Jeju Island raid, some soldiers, along with hunters from the Knights Guild, the representative guild in the Yeongnam region, arrived on Jeju Island. Their mission was to collect essence stones and stand by in case of another incident. Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, shared a story from his past as he led the group. Jong-soo reminisced about a man who never had much luck. This man determined to be the best at what he did and dreamed of becoming a gold medalist. He trained relentlessly to become stronger, even going on strict diets to compete in a lower weight division. He endured intense training sessions, and everything seemed to be in place for him to compete in the Olympics. This was his lifelong dream. He had even passed all the doping tests, and the night before the competition, he had a good dream and was in top condition. However, a manometer evaluation revealed that he had been awakened, and he was subsequently barred from competing in the Olympics. Yoontae asked if the man in the story was Jong-soo himself. Despite having to give up on his dream of competing in the Olympics, he vowed to create the country's best guild, a goal he was still pursuing with unwavering determination. As they continued their mission, Jong-soo picked up top quality essence stones they had collected. He remarked that with this stone, he could create the best guild in the country. Another hunter made a comment about the possibility of embezzlement, but Jong-soo dismissed it, focusing on the task at hand. The group continued to sweep the area, ensuring it was free of mana. Jong-soo reassured everyone, saying that it was safe to relax, as they believed all the deadly ants had been wiped out. However, as they moved forward, Jong-soo spotted an ant that had been hiding. With swift precision, he sliced it with his blade, eliminating the threat. Jong-soo acknowledged that while there might be a few stragglers, there was no need to worry too much. He and the Knights Guild were there to protect the area and ensure the safety of everyone involved. As Yoon-tae glanced to the other side, his eyes widened in shock. He had spotted something alarming and quickly alerted Jong-soo. Jong-soo turned to see what had caused such a reaction. The soldiers in the group also noticed the disturbance, and a sense of unease spread among them as they saw a figure emerging from the shadows. The figure was an unknown stranger, someone who should not have been on Jeju Island. He was a tall individual with enormous bulging muscles, wearing old-fashioned clothes. Jong-soo immediately questioned the presence of this stranger, as the only people authorized to be on the island were soldiers and agents from the association who had assigned the mission to them. However, the stranger did not fit any of these descriptions. Jong-soo and the other hunters couldn't determine whether the figure was human or something else entirely. The stranger moved closer, and the hunters hesitated to open fire, uncertain of what they were dealing with. He had glowing yellow eyes, sharp teeth, and wild black hair, giving him an otherworldly appearance. He spoke in a language none of the hunters could understand, a language that sounded as though it belonged to beasts rather than humans. Jong-soo and the others were taken aback, unsure of how to respond, but it was clear that the stranger was not alone. With a simple snap of his fingers, an invisible force swept through the air. Within seconds, Jong-soo and his guild members went limp and collapsed to the ground. The stranger was accompanied by an elderly elf with blue skin and long silver hair. The humanoid beast questioned the elf's actions. However, the elf calmly explained that there was no need to cause any further commotion, and that he had only put the hunters to sleep temporarily. The elf questioned if the beast had checked it. The humanoid beast confirmed that he had checked for the presence of a particular power. The elf was puzzled and wondered why he was helping the humans. We still don't know who he is referring to. The humanoid beast speculated that no one could truly understand the motives behind such actions, and suggested that if the elf was curious, he could ask the individual in question himself. The beast remarked on the stench of rotting ants in the area and imagined how that woman would have reacted if she had witnessed the scene. On the other hand, the elf was not deterred by these thoughts. He stated that the hunt would proceed as scheduled, and this situation did not change anything. The elderly elf stretched out his hand, creating a black hole in midair, which seemed like a gate just big enough for a single person to pass through. The humanoid beast mentioned that he believed one of them was present in South Korea and suggested taking care of the issue before leaving. However, the elf preferred to leave the matter to someone else who was already in Korea. The beast questioned if the elf was saying this because he didn't want to get involved directly. The elf left the interpretation of his actions up to the humanoid beast, stating that the beast could think whatever he wanted, and with that he disappeared through the gate, which closed behind him. The humanoid beast, now alone, muttered under his breath and called the elf a coward. He looked down at the humans lying helplessly on the ground. Deciding that there was no need to complicate matters further, the humanoid beast quietly sliced the air, creating a red gate, and vanished, leaving the hunters of the Knights Guild unharmed. Next day, Hunter Sung Jinwoo arrived at the funeral, dressed in a black suit. His presence was commanding the attention of reporters, who quickly began snapping pictures. The funeral was held to honor the hunters who had lost their lives during the Jeju Island raid, a mission that had gripped the entire nation. This raid had been Sung Jinwoo's first official mission since being re-evaluated as an S-rank hunter. It was his public debut, and the world had watched in awe as he defeated the formidable Ant King while his summoned creatures dealt with the seemingly endless hordes of ants. The mission's success had been a massive event, with people pouring onto the internet to discuss every detail. Sung Jinwoo's name was on everyone's lips, while many praised his extraordinary abilities. But not all the comments were positive. Some criticized him, believing that if he had joined the raid earlier, the needless deaths could have been prevented. Although there were those who supported Sung Jinwoo, few could argue against the fact that many lives had been lost. Under a somber sky, Sung Jinwoo stood before the memorial, his expression solemn as he paid his respects to the brave hunters who had fallen on Jeju Island. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, and the white flowers laid at the memorial spoke silently of sacrifice and courage. Mourners gathered around, sharing the sorrow and paying their respects. Yoonho, who was filled with emotion after losing his friend Byung-gyu, approached Sung Jin-woo. Yoonho had always believed that no single person could end a war alone, but the events of the Jeju Island raid had made him reconsider. Despite the tragedy, he acknowledged that Sung Jin-woo had brought an end to the nightmare on Jeju Island. In total, 4,801 hunters had participated in the 5th Jeju Island raid, alongside 727 awakened civilians who were called to fight. The death toll was grim, with 64 awakened hunters and 32 civilians losing their lives in battle. However, the final raid had the fewest casualties compared to the previous 4 attempts, marking a small yet significant victory amidst the sorrow. Sung Jin-woo sat down with President Go Gun-hee for a conversation. The topic of discussion was Jin-woo's plans to form his own guild. As an S-rank hunter, Jin-woo didn't need to go through the usual process of obtaining a guildmaster license. President Go explained that all it would take was a simple phone call to the Hunters Association, and they would handle everything for him. Jin-woo considered this information, thinking that it might be a good idea to also look into the benefits that came with being an S-rank hunter. During their conversation, President Go brought up the mysterious incident that occurred on Jeju Island. Soldiers and hunters had been sent to the island to clean up the remains of the ants and collect essence stones. However, something strange had happened. All of them lost consciousness while on the island. The hunters involved were A rank and B rank, including members of the Knights Guild. President Go wondered if Jinwoo had cast a barrier on the island and possibly forgotten about it. Jinwoo was confused by the question and clarified that he had not done anything like that. President Go seemed to believe him, but he was still puzzled by the situation. The soldiers and hunters had no memory of what happened before they lost consciousness, leaving the association with no way of determining whether they had been under a magic spell or if it was something else. Jinwoo considered the possibility that it could have been a trap left behind by the ants. Their conversation was interrupted when an employee of the association approached President Go to inform him that a guest had arrived earlier than expected. President Go apologized to Jinwoo, explaining that he needed to leave. Jinwoo acknowledged President Go's thanks, assuring him that it was no trouble at all. Sung Jinwoo decided it was time to head back, so he made his way to his car. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a voice from behind. Turning around, he saw a man approaching him. The man introduced himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters. This surprised Jinwoo, as he had never dealt with the Federal Bureau of Hunters before. Adam explained that it had been difficult to track Jinwoo down, even mentioning that he had stopped by Jinwoo's office. This made Jinwoo recall a previous conversation with Jinho, where Jinho had mentioned someone named Adam had given him a visiting card. Out of curiosity, Jinwoo asked why Adam wanted to meet with him. Adam revealed that he had some important information to share. Information that no other country or institution in the entire world could provide, except for the Bureau. Jinwoo asked Adam why they would share such valuable information with him. Adam explained that the Bureau benefited from sharing knowledge with special individuals like Jinwoo. The recent raid on Jeju Island had left a strong impression on the Bureau's deputy director, who wanted to meet Jinwoo in person to discuss matters further. Adam had a car waiting nearby and invited Jinwoo to meet the deputy director. Jinwoo considered the offer, thinking about the information that Adam claimed to have. As he opened his car door, he expressed his doubts about the reliability of the information. He told Adam that he would think it over and reach out later. However, before Jinwoo could leave, Adam mentioned something that caught Jinwoo's attention, a term he had never heard before, an upgrader. Adam explained that an upgrader was an awakened being who could enhance the abilities of another awakened being. This piqued Jinwoo's curiosity, prompting him to sit with Adam in his car and drive off to meet the deputy director. Sung Jinwoo arrived at his destination with Adam White, who announced their arrival. Inside, they were greeted by Michael Connor, the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Connor introduced himself and quickly got to the point by presenting Jinwoo with immigration documents. These documents usually took years to process, but Connor offered them to Jinwoo and told him that if he just said the word, he would instantly receive American citizenship. With a dead serious expression, Jinwoo clarified that he was more interested in the information that Adam had mentioned earlier. He asked about the possibility of an awakened being enhancing the abilities of another, specifically an upgrader. Connor confirmed that such a person existed, and with a grin, he called for her to enter. A middle-aged woman with a tan skin named Norma Selner walked in. Connor introduced her as the only person in the entire world capable of enhancing an awakened being's abilities. Jinwoo immediately sensed that she was a completely different type of awakened being. Michael Connor requested Miss Selner to explain the scope of her powers to Jinwoo. Miss Selner began explaining her powers, noting the suspicion in Jinwoo's eyes. She acknowledged that most people were skeptical about all this, and everyone gives her the same doubtful expression at first. With utmost confidence, Miss Selner declared that once Jinwoo experienced the effects of her powers, he would be begging for more in the future. She explained that every awakened being had a limit to their strength, and no one could surpass their limits. An awakened being's rank would always remain the same unless they underwent a second awakening. However, she possessed the power to help awakened beings reach beyond their potential through a process that involved 3 stages, eventually lifting their limitations. She was unsure what to call her powers. She could be performing a forced reawakening, or perhaps she was simply drawing out someone's true potential. Connor confirmed that everything she said was true, adding that Lady Selner required a long period of rest after using her powers, so only 3 or 4 awakened individuals could benefit from her aid each year. Jinwoo began to consider whether he would be one of those few people. If what she said was true, her ability was remarkable. When Jinwoo asked about the effectiveness of the process, Miss Selner explained that it varied from person to person, but after completing all 3 stages, an individual could experience a 20 to 30% increase in their strength. This revelation shocked Jinwoo. He now understood why a powerful hunter like Hwang Dong-soo had decided to move to America, despite the backlash he faced from the public for abandoning his country. Such an opportunity was too good for any hunter to pass up. Jinwoo realized that if word got out about Miss Selner's powers, it could cause significant problems. Connor acknowledged this concern, explaining that they ensured her safety, while also compensating her with a suitable salary. In return, Miss Selner enhances the abilities of the hunters they choose. The Bureau wanted to offer this incredible gift to Sung Jinwoo, recognizing the potential impact of Miss Selner's abilities on someone as powerful as him. Jinwoo considered the offer presented to him, thinking about the so-called gift that Michael Connor and Norma Selner were discussing. Connor assured him that once he became a hunter for the Federal Bureau, he would receive top priority and preferential benefits, along with help in securing the best contract with the guild of his choice. Norma Selner reiterated that there was no rush to make a decision. They were simply introducing Jinwoo to the benefits they could offer him. Jinwoo was skeptical and questioned the idea of receiving such an offer for nothing. However, Connor and Selner emphasized that this was a complimentary service, a gesture of goodwill. Jinwoo remembered Miss Selner's earlier confidence that he would be begging for more once he experienced her abilities, which means that she is certain he will be satisfied with the result. Norma Selner gently took hold of Jinwoo's wrist and with a kind smile beckoned him closer. She instructed him to look into her eyes as she began the first step of the process. As Michael observed the interaction, he was pleased, thinking that Jinwoo had taken the bait. He believed that once the first stage was completed, Jinwoo would be eager to continue and might even sign the papers immediately. As Miss Selner gazed into Jinwoo's eyes, she suddenly found herself surrounded by darkness. She searched frantically but saw nothing, until a shadow emerged. It moved closer, revealing its terrifying presence as it opened its eyes and stared directly at her. Overwhelmed by fear, Miss Selner screamed loudly, shocking everyone around her. She was utterly terrified by what she had seen. The 2 agents guarding Miss Selner immediately drew their guns, pointing them at Jinwoo in a panic. Michael Connor, alarmed by their actions, quickly intervened, shouting at the agents to lower their weapons. He reminded them who Jinwoo was and told them that if they were that worried, they should check on Miss Selner themselves. Realizing their mistake, the agents quickly holstered their guns and rushed to help the trembling Selner. Michael bowed deeply to Jinwoo, apologizing profusely for the agent's behavior. Jinwoo, still trying to make sense of what had just happened, reassured Michael that it was okay. With an extremely serious expression, Michael told the agents that if they had acted this way towards someone like Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang, they would all be dead. The agent, who was trembling in fear, could only respond with a fearful nod, realizing the gravity of their mistake. After the unsettling incident, Michael Connor rushed to Norma Selner's side as she trembled in fear. Noticing that she was covered in sweat, he asked her with concern if she was feeling unwell. Her condition was alarming, and Michael quickly decided it would be best to reschedule their meeting with Sung Jinwoo. Jinwoo was still curious about what had happened, but he agreed to leave. Michael instructed Adam White to show Jinwoo the way out. Once Jinwoo had left, Michael remained alone with Norma in the room, eager to understand what had just happened. He asked her what had gone wrong, noticing that the situation had clearly shaken her. Miss Sellner, still struggling to catch her breath, pressed her hand against her chest and finally managed to speak. She revealed that during the encounter, she had sensed something extraordinary about Jinwoo. Norma described Jinwoo as a king, a powerful king unlike any she had ever encountered before. Michael's eyes widened in shock at her words. He asked if this meant Jinwoo is as strong as a national level hunter, but Miss Sellner, who was still trembling, explained that this wasn't something she could easily measure. She confessed that she had never experienced anything like this before. While looking at Jinwoo, she felt as though something within him was staring back at her. Miss Sellner clarified that it wasn't Jinwoo himself, but rather an infinite darkness within him. This darkness, which was vast and terrifying, had gazed into her as she tried to peer into Jinwoo's soul. The encounter had left her deeply shaken, and as she continued to tremble in fear, she shared one last critical insight with Michael. She said that there is no limit to Sung Jinwoo's powers. At the Hunter Association, Go Gunhee sat alone, deep in thought. He was troubled by recent events, particularly the loss of Hunter Min Byung-gyu. Though Min Byung-gyu had retired, his noble sacrifice during the raid weighed heavily on Go Gunhee's heart. He realized that the challenges ahead might bring more destruction and sacrifices, and that thought filled him with dread. As he pondered, the phone on his desk rang loudly, snapping him out of his thoughts. When he answered the call, an urgent voice on the other end informed him of a B-rank gate that had appeared in the middle of a road. Chairman Go's eyes widened in surprise. A B-rank gate was not something an average attack squad could handle, and it required immediate attention. As he considered which major guild to contact, he suddenly remembered that Hunter Sung Jinwoo had recently opened an office for his guild near the area. Meanwhile, traffic was building up on the road where Jinwoo was driving. Deep in thought, he was trying to make sense of what Norma Sellner had seen in him. He knew she had been terrified, but he couldn't figure out exactly what she had witnessed. He wondered if it had been a glimpse of the system, but whatever it was, one thing was clear: she might refuse to meet with Jinwoo again. Jinwoo's phone vibrated, and he glanced at the caller ID. It was Chairman Go Gunhee. Curious, Jinwoo answered the call. Chairman Go spoke in a tone that suggested urgency. He informed Jinwoo about a gate that had appeared in the middle of the road, causing severe traffic issues. It was a B-rank gate, and Chairman Go asked if Jinwoo could take care of it. Jinwoo was somewhat surprised and questioned whether he could do so without proper permission. However, Chairman Go reassured him with a lighthearted remark, reminding Jinwoo that the ones who grant hunters permission for raids are the Hunter Association, and he was speaking to the chairman of that very association. As chairman, he could grant that permission himself. Jinwoo couldn't help but smile at Chairman Go's playful tone. With the chairman's approval, Jinwoo stepped out of the van, ready to take on the task. He followed the trail of manna leading to the gate. Agents had already gathered around the portal, and the police were helping to clear the traffic. As Jinwoo approached the gate, a female agent blocked his path, demanding to know what he was doing. However, she quickly recognized him as an S-rank hunter, and her surprise was evident. The crowd soon realized who he was, and excitement spread as they wondered if Jinwoo was there to handle the gate. The female agent, still trying to enforce the rules, reminded Jinwoo that even as an S rank, he couldn't just enter without proper authorization and enough people. Sensing that the situation was becoming complicated, Jinwoo made an urgent call to Chairman Go Gunhee. He then handed the phone to the female agent, telling her to speak to someone she couldn't ignore: the chairman himself. The female agent was trembling as she spoke to Chairman Go Gunhee. She quickly agreed to let Jinwoo proceed. Without hesitation, Jinwoo entered the gate, disappearing from sight. Still frustrated by the situation, the female agent muttered to herself, hoping Jinwoo would trip and twist his ankle. However, her thoughts were abruptly interrupted by screams from the other agents. The blue surface of the gate had suddenly turned blood red. It was a red gate. The sight of it sent shivers down everyone's spine, and the female agent panicked, wondering if her ill wishes had somehow caused this terrifying change. As Jinwoo stepped inside, a heavy feeling washed over him. This wasn't an ordinary gate. It was a red gate, a place where the exit would remain sealed until the mission was completed. He knew he might have to push himself to clear this gate. His thoughts drifted back to a recent conversation with his mother. She had expressed her hopes for him, acknowledging that his awakening as an S-rank hunter was something beyond their control. But with that power, he could save many people. She reminded him of his father, who had once been a firefighter before becoming a hunter. Jinwoo's mother had fallen in love with his father after seeing him save people, and she understood that Jinwoo had inherited that same sense of duty, but she had also warned him not to overdo it, to be careful. Jinwoo felt a sense of relief knowing that his his mother wasn't against his path as a hunter. Her words echoed in his mind as he prepared for the battle ahead. "This dungeon won't be too much for me," he assured himself. The battle began with Jinwoo's shadow soldiers clashing against the magic beasts that rushed toward them. Amidst the chaos, Jinwoo stood tall, commanding his army with precision. The shadow soldiers, powerful and relentless, tore through the hordes of magic beasts, annihilating them one by one. As Jinwoo's shadows overwhelmed the creatures, they stood tall, their dark forms exuding absolute dominance. The battlefield that was once filled with chaos was now laying silent beneath the relentless downpour. Rain mixed with blood, washing away the remnants of the fallen. With the last monster slain, the shadow soldiers turned toward their king. In perfect unison, they knelt, bowing their heads in unwavering loyalty. Thunder rumbled overhead, as if the heavens themselves acknowledged Jinwoo's reign. Standing amidst the battlefield, his presence alone was enough to declare one truth. He was their master, their king. With a cold glint in his eyes, Jinwoo decided it was time to move on to the next target, the boss of this dungeon. After defeating him, he would leave the dungeon. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked the video, please consider to like and subscribe. You can see previous parts on the screen. Just click and watch it. That's it for today. We will meet again in the next video. Take care.